on what we did yesterday. So yesterday we talked about the cell, its organelles, all of its parts. And today we're going to look more closely at one specific part of the cell. All right, so today we are evaluating the semi-permeability of cells. Can folks remind me, what does the prefix semi mean from our notes yesterday? Half of, or half or portion, right? Very nice. Great, so we're talking about the semi-permeability. It's the thing the cell decides to let in, or to keep out, or to push out, or to hold in. Right, so we're looking at how and why cells choose to select certain things. And we can go back to a question we had a brief conversation about yesterday, our start question of the day. Why is it buildings have security guards? All right, so folks think about protect. Protect from what? Danger from the? Outside, right? Try to keep bad stuff out. What are some things that your cell might want to keep out of itself? Something that might be in your body. Maybe bacteria that's in the bloodstream, right? Something that might invade the cell and cause it a dis-ease. Are there also situations where security guards keep things in?
A valuable stuff?
All right, perhaps to protect something valuable that you want to keep inside the cell, right? So cells are semi-permeable in both directions, right? They both permit things in, they both hold things in, or they push certain things out, so on and so forth. All right, and let's get started with our top action. So, Ms. Milton, if you'll get us started off today. Yes. All right, Eddie, great. If you could read our quote and maybe even say more about it, elaborate on it.
Even as a cell is the union of the organic body, so the family is the unit of society.
All right, and what do you believe the author might mean by that?
Everything has their own part.
Are you
Good, say more. Yeah, we work together.
Go ahead, Harold.
That, like, everything you can do without anything, like, you need each other.
Great, all right, so he's thinking of this idea of community, of collaboration, of cooperation. In our body, we have trillions of cells, right? And all of those little individual units, each little cell, what's its main objective?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. We're going to start with our cell as the unit of their body, right? What is the objective of each cell? What is it trying to accomplish with the cell? All right, we got a good word, protect. What else?
Keep something?
Reproduction, right? Each individual cell, its main job is to keep all this other stuff alive, right? All the cells are working together to keep the body going. Now let's parallel this idea of family as being a cell and society as being the body. What happens to society if individual families are not successful? Let's say we have families that are robbing or causing trouble or not being able to nourish themselves or take care of themselves. What happens to the community if you've got families that are dysfunctional? All right, it'll lose its functionality, right? We can even take this to a more micro realm. In a classroom, right, let's say 25 of you are doing the right thing, you're sitting, you're writing, you're learning, and then one person is like shouting, flipping tables over. Is that going to disrupt the learning environment? Yeah, right? So we can think about how the family, like an individual cell, if it's not in homeostasis, it can damage the whole society, right? And that's why communities often try to help each other, right? Help other families who are in need. And let's think about society as the body, right? We talked about at the first chapter, homeostatic balances. What are some things your body's always trying to maintain the same? Heart rate. We're trying to keep our heart going at a certain rate. Very nice. What else?
Body temperature.
Circulation, moving blood around, your body temperature, right? We try to keep certain things going. What are some cultural things in society that most people do? Some things that we all share in common, whether your household speaks Russian or English or Spanish. What are some things that everyone does the same in America?
Live.
Say more, like, that's a little general.
Sleep.
All right, generally, most people in a city or in America sleep when?
At night.
At night, right? So like, you kind of think about that's an inherited value, right? The family keeps that going, right? Your parents made you go to bed at a certain time even though you want to stay and watch TV all night, right? So you think about, again, how families hold society together, right? And then our homework is the other side of the sheet I gave you yesterday. If you finished both sides last night, feel free to hand it in this morning. I'm happy to take it. All right, let's move on with the notes. All right, so we're going to start off talking about diffusion. In order to understand how the membrane works, in order to understand membrane physiology, we have to understand the action of diffusion. Where have you heard the word diffuse or diffusion before?
Something self.
All right, he's thinking of something else. We're like if you try to diffuse a bomb, for example. Say more.
I don't remember in Godzilla when they were like, I mean that series, like there's this bomb that hit like Godzilla, which made the whole thing happen, and they had to like, what was it? It's like they had to like move all this nuclear stuff somewhere.
All right, great. So he's thinking about this idea that when the nuclear bomb goes off, and when the explosion happens, does all the energy, all the radiation just stay in one spot? No, it like spreads out, right? So that's a really good example of diffusion here. This is molecules using kinetic energy, and when you hear kinetic, what do you think of? A particular movement, right? You think of like, what's that particular tool you can attach to your Xbox?
Why?
The Kinect. How do you make the Kinect work?
You connect
Move.
it.
You gotta move, right? You can't just sit on the couch and stare at it, right? You gotta get up and like move around and score some points on Dance Revolution, right? So, right, kinetic is all about movement. Let's go ahead and just put that above, below it, wherever you can fit it.
Whoa.
All right, once again, the smartboard is misaligned. That's lovely. Right, so we have this idea of movement, right? Kinetic energy, and it spreads across the space evenly. Let's think about this in some more everyday terms, things that you might actually have encountered in your lifetime. So let's say I have 2 cups of water, and I pile in there, I scoop in some delicious Kool-Aid mix. What's going to happen? It's going to diffuse, right? These molecules, they want to try to get away from each other. They're going to spread out, right? So over time, what you'll have is this, right? You're going to have all the molecules that were down here all throughout this. All right. And we can think of this in terms of our own lives as well, right? So if, let's say the first week of school, I only had 12 students in this classroom, and I had you all sit right here in the middle row, 2 to 2 to 2. What are people likely to ask me for? Yeah, hey, can I have my own table, this one over here, right? All things in the universe like to spread out. They like to take up space evenly. And think of how territorial we are when people are in our space, right? We like to keep an arm's distance. All right, and all this has to do with this idea of a concentration gradient. And we're going to dissect both those words in a moment. So concentration gradient occurs when diffusion, when this action occurs, and it's based on how big the molecules are, but also the amount of space or volume available to these molecules. Like, where can they go? How much space can they take up? All right, and Eddie is going to pull a name from the cup, and they're going to tell us one of the 2 different ways we've heard the word concentration in our lifetime. Awesome. All right, so there's 2 ways we use concentration in our everyday language. What is one of them that you've heard before?
Thinking. Focusing.
All right, so he's thought, we talk about like concentrating on your work, right? So focus is one of the ways in which we think of something being concentrated, right? What else? Think kitchen.
Cook.
I'd say evaporation.
All right, so sometimes things that are concentrated might evaporate, right? They might diffuse afterwards. All right, we're making some good connections here. Yeah.
Like juice that is concentrated.
All right, juice that is concentrated. What does that mean?
Like I think the molecules like closer together. Than
Awesome, right? So he just said the magic words there, right? So we're also thinking about something that is close together. For example, when you are concentrating on something, right? All of your thoughts are on that thing, right? Your thoughts are all close together about that situation. Now gradient, let's take that one apart as well. And think about math, think about grades, grades like you get in your classes. Let's say I had two graphs, and in one graph, the line goes straight across. And in the other graph, we have a slope. Which one of these is showing a gradient, is showing a grade?
No,
Yeah, and can you say more about why you thought that?
because that was like it has nothing up there, and now it's actually moving up. There's actually like
Alright.
stuff going on.
And if this were to like represent like a gradient, like in your GPA, what could we put for symbols here to make that more meaningful? How are you graded at school? Average, we're getting there. So everyone wants a blank in this class, right? So you can say like you've got your A, and then down here you have an F, right? You have a gradient. You have a lot of points, or you have less points. All right, cool. All right, and now diffusion doesn't just have to occur randomly in the universe. It can also sometimes go through things. And this is this idea of osmosis. So osmosis is when diffusion occurs with water, and it's going through some kind of membrane or barrier. What is a hot beverage that some of you or your families might enjoy at home, where water is soaking into something and then, yeah. Right, in coffee, or what else?
Tea.
Or in tea, right? Very nice. Right, so if you take a tea bag, you put it in water, what happens with the tea bag?
Dissolves.
Yeah, does the tea bag stay dry?
No.
No, right, the water seeps in through the bag, right? And then as the tea gets wet, people talk about how it dissolves, diffuse, the tea comes out. Right, so water tends to travel through any barrier that will allow it. All right, cool. All right, a few more notes to go. We'll move on to our activity. All right, so now this idea of diffusion can happen in a couple different ways. One of them is this idea of passive or facilitated transport. Who's ever heard the word passive before? Someone is being passive or acting passively. Ashley, you want to tell me what that means? No? Or
Like calm.
all right, you're thinking of calm, right? Like it just kind of, the world just kind of happens around that thing, right? So when we think of passive transport, we're saying the molecules, they're just going to undergo diffusion on their own, right? They don't need any additional input from the universe. It's going to occur spontaneously. And Jeremiah, if you could pick a name, they could tell us what they think of the word spontaneously and what that means.
Who's that?
Oh, she transferred it. No longer with us.
Alicia.
All right, so Ms. Mill, if you could say, what is it to be spontaneous? Think about this in your common everyday language.
Awesome.
You say an action or a reaction? Is that what you said? No? What?
Extra.
Extra. Okay, so she's thinking extra. I'll give you two examples. Let's say I am talking to a person, and I say hello. I've invited them to say hi back, right? Let's say I see that person and they say hello first. Which one of those situations was spontaneous? Which one happened on its own, and which one did I like put energy into?
Didn't they put?
Right, so if they were the ones that made the action, right? So if I say hello to someone, I've caused them to say hello back. But if they see me and they just yell out hello, they've been spontaneous, right? They've reacted without my having to do anything. I was passive in the situation, I just received the hello. Now passive transport occurs if two conditions are met. One of them is that the molecules generally have to be small. Right, so things are much more likely to move on their own or be moved by the universe if they don't have a lot of weight or mass to them. There you go. I didn't get it. All right, so molecules have to be small for this to happen. Also, it happens if the membranes have a large pore, the thing that, the molecules can get in or out of. So let's just some visual examples for this, for you guys to sketch out. All right, so let's say, for example, I have a cup of oil and a cup of water, and I pour them both on the floor, right? So I've got my oil, and I've got my water. I pour them both out, and I leave the room, and I come back an hour later. What do I expect to observe?
For it to be there. And
Will they both still be there? Will one of them be gone? What do you think will happen?
Wait, are you talking about like if you put it in the same container?
I'm saying I've got a cup of oil, a cup of water. I just dump them both and make 2 puddles,
Oh.
and I leave, and I come back an hour later.
So wouldn't the oil be on top? Then
And they're not mixed. They're 2 separate puddles.
Never mind.
Yeah, but you're on the right track. Rihanna, you want to finish your thought?
When is
All right.
the-
Do we agree with her? Do you think the water might be gone?
no.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that called? And actually, she used the word earlier. All right, we expected that the water would have evaporated, right? The water will have diffused, it'll have gone away. And our oil did not, and that's because of molecular size. Right, water molecules, how many atoms are in a water molecule? Just 3, right? What are the 3 that are there? 2 hydrogens and oxygen, right? So our water molecules are really small, so they just passively float away. But oil molecules are huge. They have lots of carbon, lots of hydrogen, lots of oxygen. It takes a lot more for them to evaporate or to go off. Like you can cook them, right? And we've all cooked before, the oil starts to spatter and go away, right? It won't happen passively. You have to introduce energy to the situation. All right. Now, let's say I take a book, right? So I'm going to take my book, and let's say it's a smaller book, and I also have a sponge of the same size. All right. And I put my book in a pool of water, and I put my sponge in a pool of water. I go away, I come back an hour.
The book will, it wouldn't flow, the sponge would.
All right, great start. So let's add more. People got some other ideas. Awesome, thank you.
The sponge would absorb the
Okay.
water.
So the sponge will have taken up the water in, and Jeremy, what will have gone on with our book?
It's gonna be all soggy and wet.
All right, so the book also took some water in. Did they take in an equal amount of water?
No.
No, right, you'd expect that the sponge would have soaked up all the water around it, whereas our book, may have only taken in some of it. Why is that? What's different about the texture of the book versus the sponge?
It's hard.
It's bigger.
It's hard.
Not the size of the object, but something about it.
It's hard.
Yeah.
The membranes are like less protected.
Awesome, right? So you threw the word pores out there. Right, when you look at a sponge, what does it have all over it? Yeah, I just said you said it. It has little holes, little pores, right? Water can get in really easily, whereas our book has pores. It's still going to absorb the water. It'll just take a long time because the holes are really small. All right. And sometimes, if we want a situation to occur, we can be active about it, right? So rather than just allow it to happen passively, we can do active transport. And this is if we've got a situation where the molecules are large, or maybe the membrane pores are small, we can still cause diffusion or osmosis to occur, but we've got to do something to the situation. What might be a way to get our book to absorb the water faster? What's a way we could excite the water molecules, get them to move around quicker?
Where do we open the book?
All right, maybe for one thing, we could make more surface area. Great, right? If we spread this out, there's more space for the water to touch. And that's active, right? Because we're physically manipulating the situation. What's another thing we could do to the water?
You could like splash it on it.
All right, right, you could displace the water, right? You could distribute it differently. What else? You could heat it up, right? You could add more energy. So those are all great ways that we could talk about active transport, right? That we have introduced more energy to the situation, and that energy has caused the diffusion to occur more quickly. All right. Now that we've got some basic verbs down, some action, we're going to start talking about our membranes and their physiology. So if everyone would open their book to page 225, please. All right, and when you're looking at 225, you'll notice you've got a picture there, a side view of the cell membrane. We are going to be creating a model of that today. So this is an example from the previous class. Each of you is going to create an individual unit, and we're going to put the units all together. So what's going to happen is we're going to create this exact model and talk about what all the different parts do. You'll notice there are different kinds of protein channels, just like in our picture here. So to get us started with that, if everyone could head on over to the homework table, grab one of each piece of paper. So each needs three. Each needs three things.
I feel like I got the world in my hands. Great.
Yeah. We're going to color it first. Oh, okay. Each individual needs all three. That I trust.
Yo, you gotta go get it. You gotta get it. Individual.
No, you haven't done it yet. Yeah. Right there. Say it for me again. Oh, Slender Man. Alright. Slender Man. Alright, cool. He was in charge of giving you any names. Did you ask him?
No.
That's it, bud. See what I mean? No fun at all. It seems to be, right? You so can't have any fun of any kind. Joyless, like this. Alright, folks. So by now you've grabbed one of each. Let's do it all together. Alright, so you guys have these things, right?
Hey, what do I do with this?
I'll just take it back. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in alphabetical order on these objects. We're going to color them in, and we're going to describe what they do. So first off, you want to go into your toolkit here and either get out markers or colored pencils. You want the whole rainbow, so Roy G did. Markers or colored pencils. Whole rainbow. One per group. Everyone's doing their own.
Taste the rainbow, feel the rainbow.
Yeah, feel the rainbow, man.
What are the colors again?
Roy, R-O-Y, G, B, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, twinkle.
Wait, say that again?
I got red. Violet. I got green. each item, piece by piece. We're going to explain what it does, and we're going to color it in. Okay.
No, everything on there was just.
All right, so starting off with our anchor protein. So finding your anchor protein on one of the 3 sheets. Diana, we're going to cut them out at the end. So we're going to color them all in. It's easier to color them when they're like on the paper. All right, so just based on the name, what do you think this kind of thing might do? Anchor protein.
Hold it down, stable.
Awesome, right? Stabilize, hold it down, right? Our anchor protein, we're going to make it red. And what it does is it connects cells to
Who got a pen?
each other. Who got a pen? Right, so I've taken my first one here. I've written its function. I've written its physiology right on top. Did you find it yet, Samantha? You find it yet?
Hey.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's gonna be red. Yeah. Once you've written the physiology of this anchor protein, go ahead and take your red marker or pencil and get to color.
Connect what?
Connect cells to other cells. It helps stabilize. Pass here. Oh yeah, so the 2 ladies who are gone, one of them the nurse, one of them is O'Hara's. So just take the pass and leave the sweat. This is what. All right, so we've written the physiology, and now we are coloring the object in. And it doesn't need to be crazy saturated, just enough to give it a nice appearance, right? You know, and once again, our final model will have all of these different parts on it, right? So we're going to be creating this at the end. And I'll put this back up at the...
Can I take this tape off?
Yeah, please do, if it's disturbing you. Yeah, I don't know why someone wasted my tape on such a thing. All right, so we have our anchor protein, right? And just like he threw a good word out there, stabilized, right? These anchor proteins hold all the different cells together and, stabilize the body. Let's find our next one. We're going to take our orange, and we are going to do our channel protein. So that's on a different sheet, so I'll find that one. Oh yeah, it does. All right. Now you'll notice on our channel protein, they've got a little circle with an arrow. It's traveling. So what we're going to write inside that what channel proteins do is they transport water into or out of the cell. Transport. Right, and they've given you a little example of a water molecule that's traveling. I'll reorient this.
Connect cells.
And this is going to be in orange. All right, so you can go ahead, after you've written that the purpose of this particular protein is to transport water, you're going to go ahead and color that in orange. And as you might imagine, we'll be doing the same with the rest of these, and then we'll put our models together and create our class-wide model.